Dun 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 dun. Hello, how are you? Welcome to the first part of the Megalong. The Megalong. Meg by Steve Alten. Part 1, discussion, where I just mumble and jumble and say stuff left and right that hopefully makes sense, but we'll see what happens. For those that have no idea what's going on, I planned a read-along for the book Meg by Steve Alten, the book that I don't shut up about, Giant Jurassic Shark. The film releases next month on August 10th, so this is basically just to get everyone excited for the movie release. That was my goal for this read-along. But in planning this read-along, I need to say this right off the bat, I already messed up. I messed up, I failed, I'm sorry, I don't know what I'm doing. But okay, so with Meg, here's the thing. There are several editions of this book, quite a few. It's weird. So you have the original book when it was first published in 1997, I believe. It's this hardback. It's a very short book. It's only around 200 pages. But then in 2005, Steve Alten republished, he rewrote and revised this edition, which is the edition that I'm most familiar with, that I've read a million times. This was published in, I think, 2005. So this is a little mass market paperback. But then 2 or 3 years ago, Steve Alten rewrote, revised, and wrote an origin story for his new Meg edition, which is this one. Now, this one might look different than the newest one that's just been released, but it's the same thing, you know, the one with the shark, I think, about to eat the surfer. This is the same edition as that. This is just a pretty hardback that I got for myself. So with this first discussion, I'm actually reading from the new edition, new edition, and they're all basically the same. There's some differences, but with this new edition, there's an origin story in the beginning, and that's what most of this first discussion is going to be talking about. So, I mean, if you're reading an older edition, don't even worry about it. I'm gonna tell you what happens in the origin story. It's fine. Everything is fine, okay? And also, to make your life easier, the first section I'm going to be talking about all the way up to the chapter The Lagoon, and for next week I will be talking about the book all the way up to the chapter Battle at Sea, and then from Battle at Sea for the third week to the end of the book. Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense. I apologize for my screw up, but we're moving on. So without further ado, let's start talking about Meg. But also, just need to throw this out there. This whole discussion is going to be filled with spoilers. Obviously, I'm going to be talking about everything that happens within this. So if you haven't read the book, what are you doing? Get out. Go read the book first, then you can come back. Unless you don't care about spoilers, but I mean, which is fine, you know, you do what you want to do. But I just need to throw that out there. Spoilers, people. Spoilers. Meg opens up with Meg Origins, an origin story to Meg, because Meg needs an origin story. Yes, it does. It's very important, you know, very important. And we have a prologue that takes place in 1874 aboard the HMS Challenger, a ship that is sailing around the Mariana Islands. It's in the Philippine Sea, and they're sailing around the Marianas Trench. You know, it's a ship that's filled with scientists, and they're trying to collect fossils and whatever they can from the sea floor, which is actually pretty interesting. But what's even more interesting is that these scientists didn't expect this trench to be as deep as they originally thought. So now they're having to drop more line to reach the bottom because, you know, it's freaking deep. It's like, how far is it? It's very, very far. But what's even more interesting is that this captain is having a conversation with one of the scientists, a casual conversation, you know? They're talking about how some of the fossils that they had collected were shark teeth, And the scientist says, yeah, you know, these shark teeth, they belong to the megalodon. And, you know, some of these shark teeth aren't even that old, which then sort of brings up the possibility, are these sharks down below here now? Could they still be here? That could be a thing, right? And if that was a thing, well, if I was aboard that ship, the first thing I would say would be, let's get the fuck out of here, because I ain't about to get eaten by a big ass shark. No, thank you. But the conversation is really interesting. I want to share it with you. Exactly how big would these mega sharks of yours be? Said the captain. Some say 13 meters, but these fragments tell me different. I've held an 18-centimeter tooth in my hand. Its owner had to measure 20 meters from snout to tail. Good God, man, that's more than half the length of the Challenger. A creature that size, we'd need a bigger boat. Yeah, you would need a bigger boat. You'd need a much bigger boat. You should just go home. Just go home now. That's basically the prologue. It's just 2 or 3 pages of this crew, and then the captain just stares out to the sea, imagining if those sharks could be down below, still existing. It's very ominous, you know, sort of, kinda. Also, this dialogue being from 1864 is just, it doesn't, let me know your thoughts. So that's the prologue. And the rest of the origin story takes place present day. We're in the Philippine Sea again, Mariana Islands, Marianas Trench again. But this time we follow a top secret Navy expedition. No one knows about it because, you know, it's top secret. They are out diving in the submersibles down in the trench to the Challenger Deep. Now, no one's really been down there many times before, just I believe 2 times before. One was manned and one was unmanned. And now we follow Jonas Taylor, who is a submersible pilot. He's basically known as the best of the best. You know, he's clocked in dive after dive after dive, and he has such a clean record. But he's now going on his, I'm not sure what dive it was, but he's been on countless dives in such a short amount of time on this mission. And he's currently running on 3 hours of sleep. 3 hours of sleep after going on countless dives, and there is a storm that is slowly approaching this area. But these Navy people want to go down one more time for another dive and push Jonas to pilot the sub again, despite the fact that Jonas is running on 3 hours of sleep, hasn't had any rest. They want to send him down there again to pilot the submersible. It's crazy. There's a doctor and the captain, and they clear him. They clear him and they say, yep, you're going down there. You're going down there. Everything's fine. And Jonas says, no, I haven't rested. I haven't slept. What are you talking about? You're crazy. But then they corner him, and they basically don't give him a choice. They say, hey, you're going down there or we're gonna do something very bad to you. So he doesn't have a choice, which is just awful. What the fuck? It makes my blood boil so much. I feel so bad for Jonas Taylor. So he goes, he has to go. He gets ready for his dive, and he has 2 other pilots with him. They're sort of there for comedic value, I guess you could say. They're not that important. They're there. They're gonna die. Whatever. So like I said, Jonas, running on 3 hours of sleep, starts piloting down into the trench once again for a final dive. A final dive that isn't going to end well. It is not going to end well. And then we get a POV switch. Our point of view changes to that of the shark, the Carcharodon megalodon. And despite not really enjoying and seeing the point of the origin story, I've only read the origin story twice, including this reading. It was never really interesting to me. But my absolute favorite thing about these books and this series as a whole is getting to read from the perspective of the shark. It is so fascinating getting to see the perspective from the creature. So that's what we get. We read about the shark, we read about how it lives in this environment, how it hunts for prey, blah blah blah. Very fascinating stuff. Now don't get me wrong, the writing isn't great, but it's just very fascinating, you know? And then we also get a introduction to a character named James Macreads. For short they call him Mac. He later on in the series becomes one of Jonas's best friends, sorta, if you would, in the series, and it's sort of just an introduction to him, how he gets into trouble, and how later on him and Jonas are going to become friends. He is a pilot, not a submersible pilot, but an airplane pilot, and he is one of those characters that you will grow to enjoy, but he comes across as such an asshole in this origin story. He just, the way he talks about women is awful, and that's something I knew I really needed to bring up in this read-along. The way Steve Alten writes women in his books is just so cringy, is not good. I can't quote you exactly, but I know for certain there is a line where he describes a woman's breast as two large grapefruits that are barely being concealed by her tank top or t-shirt, something along those lines. And just a lot of these characters say so many snarky remarks towards women, and the way that they view them is just so awful. And every time I read that, I go, Steve, really, really? So when Mac is introduced, he comes across as such an asshole, but he does grow to be more likable later on in other books. Moving things along, we then see the Megalodon eat this Chronosaurus. It's really cool. Do you know what a Chronosaurus is? They're giant, they're big, they're scary, they look like reptilian things, creepy. But the Megalodon eats one, it's pretty cool. And then we go back to Jonas Taylor, who's in the submersible down in the trench with these two pilots, and he keeps almost falling asleep. He keeps phasing in and out. The pilots keep having to wake him up. They can obviously tell that he's not fully there, you know, he shouldn't be there. But he's just trekking along, making his way through, trying to complete this dive. And what's so sad is that Jonas could have made it through this dive. He really could have made it back to the surface perfectly fine. Everything could have been fine and dandy, except there's this other ship that has nothing to do with the Navy. There's near the Guam Islands or something of that sort, and there's a scientist on this ship, and he sees this blip on the sonar down below and somehow theorizes that that's a megalodon down there. It has to be. There's nothing else it could be. He and the rest of the crew then try to lure it to the surface, and it's in all of this chaos and all this mumbo jumbo that the shark notices Jonas's submersible pilot. Jonas sees it down below, a couple, maybe 100 feet down below. He sees its albino white shadow, whatever. There's a picture in the actual book. I don't know if the new editions have this picture. It shows the shark rising up to the submersible, and Jonas sees it through the window. It is terrifying. And I mean, well, seeing the megalodon rise straight up towards the submersible, Jonas obviously freaks out, and he straight away hits the emergency button, can't speak, in the submersible, which then rockets them to the surface. But because he hit the button without doing something else, it messes with the pressurization of the submersible, and right off the bat, I guess one of the pilots starts hemorrhaging, and the other pilot, I'm not sure what happens to him, but they make it to the surface, and that pilot has a heart attack. He doesn't live through the night, so both of these pilots die. The only one that lives is Jonas. I think what happens right after that is that Jonas then tells everyone that a shark was about to attack the submersible, a giant shark, and that's why he hit the emergency button. But of course, that's crazy. There are no sharks in the Marianas Trench. What are you talking about? So he's stripped of his title, given an honorable discharge, and his career's over. He's not piloting ever again, and all the blame is put on him. I believe they say he had psychosis of the deep or something. It's just so fucked up because the doctor and the captain cleared him despite him only having 3 hours of sleep. So frustrating, you know? And I got even more frustrated because right at the end of the origin story, you see the doctor or the captain, one of the two, they go back to the submersible and they see that it's been bitten or whatever, and they reach down below and they pull out a tooth, and the tooth cuts their hand. They're like, oh shit, there's a tooth. Jonas obviously was telling the truth. So then they run to the edge of the boat and they throw the tooth in the water, clearly to hide evidence, you know, so they knew Jonas was telling the truth, but still, they let him take the blame. Those freaking assholes. But that basically sums up Meg origins, and I personally am not a fan of the origin story to Meg. I don't really see that it adds much to the story. It gives a backstory for Jonas and it kind of makes you feel for him and empathize with him and whatnot, but for me it's not that great, and it doesn't have that impact that the first chapter of the original Meg has. It doesn't give you that whoa factor, that oh my gosh, did that just happen? So for me personally, Origins was a little disappointing. But moving on to Meg, the actual story that I care about, we open up in the late Jurassic, early Miocene period. Now I want to read to you the very first sentence. As a kid, this sentence, I don't know, it gave me goosebumps. I did read this when I was 11, so there's that. From the moment the early morning fog had begun to lift, they sensed they were being watched. Without saying too much, in the first chapter of Meg, we basically have a prehistoric battle. A battle between, okay, it's not really a battle because Megalodon obviously wins, but you have the T-Rex, the Tyrannosaurus Rex, and the Megalodon. And the Megalodon eats the T-Rex. The T-Rex goes into the ocean following some other dinosaurs that it wants to eat, but it gets caught in, you know, Meg's territory. The T-Rex then struggles to make its way back to land. It gets stuck in the mud, and then there's this scene where the Megalodon comes up from the surface, shooting the T-Rex out of the water, sort of crushing its bones, and blood and guts go everywhere. It's great. It's so great. That's how Meg opens, which I love so much. But then after that, we go back to present day. This is years and years and years after Meg origins. We are now with Jonas Taylor, and we follow him at a book conference signing. Jonas Taylor is now known as the shark guy. He has these theories about how the Megalodon could possibly not be extinct, how it could be alive today. He just published a book, and he's just spewing out his theories to this audience, and the audience is throwing a bunch of questions, not believing him, blah blah blah. It's interesting. It kind of reminds me of the one scene, and I think, where Dr. Alan Grant in the beginning of, what was it, the third film or the first film, second film, one of the films. I really pictured it like that. But then Jonas's wife shows up. Her name is Maggie. I would describe Maggie as the Wicked Witch of the West. She is evil. She is awful. She is horrible. I don't think I've ever disliked a character as much as I've disliked Maggie. Maggie's very angry with Jonas because she also has an event that she needs to get to, and she's waiting for him, and she's getting frustrated. And then this other reporter starts questioning Jonas about his old top secret dive in the Marianas Trench, which no one knows about, so of course he has to deny everything, and he quickly rushes out, leaves, and then runs into someone that he used to know. Her name is Terry Tanaka. Again, she's described as an Asian beauty or something, almond eyes. The descriptions, my goodness. But moving on, he goes in a car with his evil wife Maggie and his best friend Bud, and they go off to this other event where Maggie is receiving an award for a documentary she helped create about whales, but of course no one cares because she's evil. And it's here that Jonas realizes that Maggie, his wife, and his best friend Bud have been sleeping together, and she's been cheating on him for who knows how long. So he gets very drunk, very angry. He goes over to Bud, and Maggie punches Bud. Everyone gets angry, blah blah blah, ruckus. Jonas runs outside and pukes his guts everywhere because he's drunk, and that's when he's puking his guts everywhere, that this woman, Terry Tanaka, approaches Jonas and says, "Hey, Jonas, my dad, he needs your help." And Jonas says, "Who are you? What are you talking about? Do you remember me, Jonas? You know me." And Jonas says, "Oh, actually, I do remember you. And I remember your father too." And she says, "Great, we need your help." And I think I'm gonna end it there because honestly, I'm talking a mile a minute and there's so much more I want to say, but I think I'm going to save that for the second week discussion because it just makes more sense to talk about it then. Please discuss all your thoughts. Let me know how you're feeling about the book. Let me know your opinions, what you think about the writing because it's kind of cringy, what you think about the shark. Just thoughts in general, leave those down below. And also I urge you all to put your thoughts and opinions on social media in the hashtag. There's hashtag Megalong that you're more than welcome to utilize during this month. I've been seeing everyone's reactions to the book so far, and it's so hilarious to read everyone's thoughts, and seeing everyone's pictures on Instagram too is so cool. So thank you so much to everyone that's participating. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. I'm so excited for the movie. I can't wait. I hope you guys have a great day or night wherever you are, and I will see you in another video very soon. Bye!